Well, Republicans have made their choice for congressional nominee, but we have a candidate here who says not so fast. And we're going to be talking with Tracy Jones on this special edition for some straight talk. I'm Bunker Bob Steinhagen, and this is The Bunker Bob Show. Yes, and today I've got a special guest, Tracy Jones, who is something unusual. This is doesn't happen very often in American politics, or even especially in the state of Texas. But Tracy is a write-in candidate, and one of the things that I put in the teaser for this show is you're a fellow conservative, and it's why I've invited you to the show, because I feel like conservatives, regardless of who I'm endorsing, and I've already been very open with Tracy and his campaign that I am endorsing Pat Fallon, but we are fellow conservatives, and you have things to say that I think are important, that I think that most of the audience would agree with. But ironically, I also think that Pat Fallon would also agree with most of what you're going to say too. So doesn't mean that we shouldn't have this conversation, which is why you're here. Tracy, thank you for being here with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're from Texarkana, Texas.
Yes, sir. Texarkana, Texas.
And where you and tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Where'd you?
So I was born in Mount Pleasant, in the middle of Titus County. My dad was a dairy farmer on the English Brothers Dairy Farm in Dalby Springs, Texas. So that's where I spent the early part of my life, and then been around Texarkana the rest of my life. 2010, I had a situation where my wife passed suddenly with a brain aneurysm, and briefly moved outside of the Texas side of Texarkana over to the Arkansas side to be with family, and outside of that, pretty much been right there in Texas my whole life. So
when you say your wife passed away, did you have kids?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and you still do, I guess.
We have a lot of kids.
Okay, well, tell me about your kids.
Yeah, so I had two daughters at the time, and so and then I remarried to my new wife, and she had three daughters, and now we have one of our own. So 6 girls total in the house.
6 girls?
6 girls.
Holy moly.
We got our first grandson's 3 years old, and our first granddaughter will be here in December. So we got a happy pack of kids running around.
Well, you know, we talked before this. We had a little conversation about the experience of losing your wife. It's something that a lot of men can't imagine. How did that impact you? And did that have anything to do with you running now?
You know, I think definitely it does. I was raised in a Pentecostal church. My dad was a Pentecostal preacher, and so I had grown up knowing a lot of the head knowledge of what it was to be a Christian. I didn't have what I call the heart knowledge, or the close relationship with Christ. And through that period of mourning, you know, I kind of left the church and went out in our denomination, what folks would call out into the world. You know, when I was you know, a teenager, and I was out there for the better part of 20 years before this situation happened. And what I realized was that through this, I think that through that, you know, the Bible talks about blessed to be in the house of the mourning. You know, I really figured out what that meant. There's something different about being in a place of mourning where God can really do some different things with you. And that was at 35 years old is really where I began a relationship with Christ, had a radical kind of transformation. And it was through that, I know it was through that time that just kind of didn't happen immediately right after. There was a lot of confusion. I had a little bit of a tough time regrouping and pulling myself back together. But through that hardship, I found this relationship with Christ. You know, he was there all along. I didn't know how to open up and let him come in. And at that point, I was able to begin that relationship with Jesus, and it changed my life. And so, yeah, I think it definitely has something to do with why we're running today, because once my relationship was reestablished, then some of these old roots from the Pentecostal upbringing come in, where I used to hear about a time where, you know, we may be in a day when we show up and the churches are closed. And I always kind of seen that as, honestly, I just didn't see that as a possibility. But sure enough, you know, at the beginning of this COVID, as you know, we showed up and churches were closed, and we were mandated that folks couldn't gather. And all of a sudden, that sparked that thing that had been put in me years before to say this is what we have to stand up against. This is, as Christians and believers, this is what we have to stand up against. And I was taught coming up that the same blood that was there for my salvation was there for my healing. And all of a sudden we're talking about a situation to where we're dealing with something that, either can God heal? Does God heal? And all of a sudden I was thinking, okay, well, we don't have enough people who have that absolute answer inside. And for me, I think that because of my parents, I slept on these pews 7 days a week. I mean, as a preacher's kid, PKs know you're in church every day. There is no off season, if you're a PK. And so that stuff was ingrained.
PK meaning pastor's kid.
Yes, sir.
Yes. All right. Yeah.
So that stuff was just ingrained. I mean, you don't even have to reach for it. It's just in there. And so I just automatically knew, okay, we have to have people who are really, really solid on what God can do, on what the Word of God says, because that's, to me, the only path forward. If we don't understand what the Word of God is in this situation with COVID, we're going to be trapped in a cycle and a season of fear, because only the Word of God sets us free from that fear. The Word says that He doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. And a sound mind doesn't shut down global economies over a virus. And so that just kind of was my mentality. That so I will say it. Yeah. My upbringing in church is definitely why I'm sitting here today.
So, what do you consider yourself a Republican?
Well, so I've always voted Republican.
Okay.
So I do consider myself a Republican. I will tell you that through this relationship with Christ, I have began since 2010 to look at things through what I would call a kingdom lens. That lens really doesn't fit any box. If you're a kingdom person, you know that the boxes are not. It doesn't stay inside of a box. So, although I voted Republican because it closest aligns with what my value system is, I really would like to tell you that I'm a kingdom person and I view things through a kingdom lens. And I don't think that we always get that right as Republicans. There's, especially with the COVID's, particular example of that is what we're dealing with COVID. We just didn't have. I think now you're seeing the president with his latest tweets, some of the things he's talking about on November 4th. This is going to be history. We got to start moving forward. COVID. The language that he's using is really the same language we've been using since the beginning, is that, we cannot be subject to fear of a virus. We have to move forward, and we have to move forward knowing what the Word of God says and knowing what our authority and our strength is in that Word of God. The laying on of hands by the elders, the healing. To see churches shrink back, and it just broke my heart. I mean, honestly, from where I come from as a child in these Pentecostal churches, where we'd see people come in sick and hands be laid on them and people walk out healed. If you know that that's real and you know that that's possible, something like COVID, it really is an opportunity for the church. In my mind, it's an opportunity for the church to take the lead and take the charge.
So have you been politically active?
Very little. I've voted in every general election that I can remember since, at least back to George Bush.
Primary elections?
I voted in the 2018 primary election. I voted in the preferential primary in 2016. So I've been in some of those, but I wouldn't say I've been.
Well, let me be more specific. I mean, in 2016, did you vote for Donald Trump?
On the second time around. The first time around, I voted for Ted Cruz. So in the prepreferential primary, I voted
Well, that's
for
the
Cruz.
primary. So, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I voted for Ted Cruz as well. So, yeah.
But now,
but you did vote for Cruz. I mean, for Trump in the general.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Always voted Republican. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
I see. And so, but you haven't. You don't consider yourself active politically. You've never been you've never gone to the state convention as a delegate. You've not been active with the Republican Party at all.
No, sir. I am engaged and aware of politics. I watch way more news than what my wife is comfortable with. So I'm constantly digesting thoughts, but I've not gone as far as being engaged in the delegate system or anything like that.
So one of the things that is problematic is, how do we get here? How did we get to this place? And couldn't it be said that, as Sedgman Burke said that the greatest way for evil to prosper is for good men to do nothing? And so, what I'm seeing is a lot of people who have sat on the sideline for so long and allowed things to happen. So that's my question to you: is why have you sat on the sideline and not been active before now?
Yeah, so I think sitting on the sidelines would actually be the wrong word, because the way I view it, and I think the way a lot of Americans view it, is we're taxpayers. So we're out here busting a move and we're paying heavy taxes. We are expecting, we have an expectation, and it's a false expectation, but we do have an expectation that people in the Republican Party are going forth and carrying out our desire after representing us, which is what ironically I'm doing today, is talking about being a representative. So I actually was not in the position of what I call the sidelines, because for anybody to go and represent and have a salary, it means that Americans have to work and pay taxes. The government doesn't produce anything, so there's no money coming from the government.
That's exactly right.
So if we don't work and do our part, these representatives don't have a job. So in my part, I was on the back side of this as like almost the engine. I was part of the engine process that was paying for these guys to go and represent us. And what I come about was we're just not getting the kind of representation that we want. And
so that brings me to the bigger question is, the Republicans have chosen a nominee, Pat Fallon, State Senator Pat Fallon. And but why is it that you don't feel like he is a good representative for you?
Well, so if you look at issues like open constitution carry, so Pat's been in the system for 11 years now. No movement on open constitution carry. There's been no movement on that. Also with COVID, I see people coming forth now. I actually misspoke and thought that Pat was part of an MTX contact tracing lawsuit, which he wasn't. Pat just had given some strong language, I guess, to the governor at some point. But in my mind, as a representative, we've given away $295 million to a company to basically spy on the American people. This is not acceptable to me. So in my mind, it's not just that you would have strong language, or actually what I'd like to see is what I've seen with.
You're not. You're to be clear, you're not saying Pat Fallon.
No,
Governor
Abbott
okay.
actually promoted this contract.
Right,
there were several folks who spoke out against it. Pat Fallon was one of those people.
Okay.
But my point is that the language is not loud enough. Somebody needs to be in the face of the governor putting a stop to this on behalf of the people. If you're a representative for the people don't want to be spied on. The people don't want to spend $300 million of our tax dollars to have a company contact trace us everywhere we go. And I feel like a lot of our leaders have sat silent. Now, I give credit to the 5 men who finally filed the lawsuit. I think Senator Bob Hall was one of those guys.
Yep.
So those guys deserve credit for going the extra mile of filing that lawsuit. But ultimately, when something like this is happening, I believe that most people like myself, now I'm going to tell you, I'm a water cooler guy. So people are standing around the office, they're standing around the water cooler, and they're talking about this stuff.
Okay.
So, folks are not happy about this. I mean, you're talking to one of those folks right now. I'm one of the guys that's paying the bill for this, and I'm thinking somebody needs to be stopping that. And I know that everyone I've spoken to said not enough was done during the crazy mandates and the shutdowns. I stopped to go to the bathroom on the way down here. Get all the way to the door. Can't get in without a mask, right?
Right.
So these things are something that somebody should be making noise about.
Okay, so
really enough noise going on.
All right, well, let's talk about that. So the state legislature is not in session. So, Bob Hall, by the way, one of the greatest state senators the state of Texas, in my opinion, has ever had. He is way ahead of this issue. He is one of the great leaders of bringing truth to light, even though Facebook and Twitter and all these things are trying to stop him from doing that. But in light of that, Bob Hall's voice is limited to what he can get out. He's not able to affect legislation at this time, nor is Pat Fallon. And so the question goes to Pat. As a Republican, I look at Pat Fallon and I look at his voting record, and can you name anything that he's done, that he has, any piece of legislation that he has put in place that you would say this is not a conservative?
No, it's not. It's not so much about what he's voted for or what he's done. Like I tell you before we started this, I don't know Pat Fallon. I just simply don't feel like anybody is doing enough. I feel like where we are right now is that we have people in office who are, when I look at the language and stuff that comes up right before an election season, We sit dormant over here from March until election time, and nobody says anything. So we get right over here to election time, and now all of a sudden everybody starts making noise. A lot of this were lawsuits that have no chance of passing. So I don't want to talk bad about Pat Fallon. What I want to tell you is about me. I'm going to take something different. I'm going to be talking different, walking different. I don't understand all the rules, and that's a good thing. Everywhere I've ever been, being able to talk outside of the box, it opens up people's minds. When you're just limited to what you know the box is, you're stuck in the box. We've got to find a way to shut down this tyrannical move of our state and basically the nation. We got issues like vaccines that are going to come up here in this next term. We've got issues like the state wanting to impose themselves in the middle of our First Amendment to make it to where we can't worship freely. These are very, very serious issues that demand a very strong, radical, crazy voice. We're going to have somebody that makes noise to the end of the world. No stopping, no worrying about parties. That's why when you ask me about Republican, I'm an American. So I'm not necessarily worried about what any political party thinks about what I say. I'm going to be screaming out loud to the American people. We got to save this republic right here, right now. We're at the edge of the cliff. And we've been doing the same thing over and over and over again for a very long time. And I'm less free today than I've ever been.
Yeah, you know, and it's interesting because I mean, when I look at Senator Fallon's record, one of the things that he two issues you talked about the First Amendment, which I'm going to be bringing up with him today because I'll be interviewing him a little bit later, is the fact that he brought a bill that ensured the right of college students to be able to speak. Exercise their freedom of speech, including conservatives. He also co-sponsored a bill that enables people to say Merry Christmas on school property. And so, I mean, when you say, I mean, we're not being proactive, I think Senator Fallon has done a good job of being way out front on a lot of these issues.
Well, I think Senator Fallon is always on these safe votes. That's what I see. He's on safe votes.
Okay, well, wait a minute. Let's talk 2015. Senator Fallon, House member Fallon at the time was one of 19 members, conservative members, who basically voted against House Speaker Joe Straus to be speaker when they were selecting speaker. 19 conservatives. And what that did, and by the way, Fallon is not a rookie. He's been there. He knows how the system works. You vote against the sitting House Speaker, you will lose your ability to ever chair a committee, which happened. You will lose. They will primary you. So when you say that Pat, I mean, I look at House Member Fallon. There was nothing safe about that. It was politically the most stupid thing that he could have done, and it wasn't a naive vote. He did it out of principle. And how do you? So I'm going to take issue with you on when you say things like that.
So where do you find him when he starts with strong language on the code and doesn't end up as part of the lawsuit?
Well, again, he's running for Congress. He has given up his Senate seat. He's focused on this. Look, I'm not sure.
But I asked you a point blank question right there. I asked you about where was he at on the lawsuit. How come he didn't add his name to the lawsuit if his language was so strong against the governor? How come he's not?
I don't know that. Okay,
and
respectfully, I don't know that his language is strong against the governor.
Well, that's what he says. He says he had strong language for the governor.
Then I'll ask him about that.
He didn't follow through with the lawsuit with Senator Hall.
Is that because he had? Did the lawsuit come before or after he's running for Congress?
The lawsuit would have come after.
Okay, well then he gave up his Senate seat. So he wouldn't be part of that lawsuit.
Well, these are the things that I take issue with as far as with these guys. Now, again, I want to go back and stress to you that I'm not against Senator Fallon. What I'm against really is the system.
I get it. Don't you think? But I think Senator Fallon has demonstrated that he's against the system too in a lot of ways.
No, I don't buy that for a minute.
All right.
I don't buy that from any of these guys.
Okay.
Listen.
Why?
What I'm telling you is, look at where we are. You have to honestly look at where we are. We're one COVID uptick away from being totally shut down again. Nobody is taking the kind of stands that need to be taken. If the legislators...
Well, Bob Hall is. You highlighted 5 people. There are people doing it.
Well, what I'm saying is, if the legislators shut down, why aren't we opening that back up? Why aren't we taking the steps that need to be taken to get this stuff opened back up? Maybe it's not even a deal to where this is one person can do this, but everybody collectively in the government needs to figure out how the state of Texas is going to be open, how it's going to be free, and how we're going to have our constitutional rights.
Yeah.
That has to happen.
Yeah, Tracy,
this is my issue here.
You and I are pretty much in agreement, I think, because I think that the issue with the COVID thing is just a sticky wicket all around, and it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. I think you would maybe agree with that. The issue is I kind of think that people should have the right to be stupid, and if they want to go out and catch COVID, okay, that's their right. Government doesn't have the right or shouldn't have the right and authority to say you can't go out, you can't celebrate Thanksgiving, as one governor is doing and putting in mandates, not Governor Abbott. So I mean, I think we're in agreement. I believe that the herd immunity issue has never been allowed to take effect. So there's a lot of things that I think you and I agree on. But the problem is, if I look at where Governor Abbott is and the position that he's in, he's got the President of the United States saying, "Hey, we need to shut these things down." That's a tough place to be.
Yeah, well, that's not what the president's saying. The president's telling people now to open up.
No, I'm talking about before. Because where we're at, how we got here, this is what caused you to go run for Congress. So let's talk about that.
So we're talking about months ago.
Yep.
When this was going to be a 2-week to flatten the curve type deal.
Right.
Now you and I are back over here now pressing November.
Right.
Okay? So the deal is the president is clearly with every breath telling people, wrap it up. Round the corner, we're done, it's over. COVID, bunch of losers. I mean, the president's trying to tell you this thing is over. We've got to get back to normal. We've got to get back to freedom. Now, what I'm saying is, in Texas, we have to have people that are going to align themselves alongside the president and say, enough is enough, shut it down. I don't know.
When you say shut it down, what do you mean?
Shut the COVID restrictions down.
Okay, gotcha.
We have to go back to freedom.
Yeah.
So my point is this. What I seen was an opportunity for myself to exercise my right to be a write-in candidate. So I'm not a person who likes to talk a whole lot. Just a little is enough for me, and then I'm ready for action.
Okay.
So if I'm standing around talking to all these people on the job, wherever, and everybody's griping and belly aching about the government, I'm doing the same. Nobody's happy with Republicans. Nobody's happy with Democrats. That's universal language.
That's true.
So if I'm standing around talking and listening to this after I've talked about that long, I'm finished talking. Now I'm ready to do something because I'm a fixer. And my wife will tell you, if she gets upset, there's a 5-minute interval on that upset. We let it flow for 5 minutes. We have to shut it down and fix it. I can't stay in that very long.
Okay, so all right, well let's put rubber with the road. So you're in Congress. And you're going to fix something. How are you going to fix something with Nancy Pelosi as Speaker?
Well, let me tell you this. My ministry that I work in is built and designed to bring unity, right? So some folks might say the same thing about a Baptist and a Pentecostal or an Episcopalian. How do you bring those pastors to the same table? How do you bring those folks to the same place? That's almost as hard as politics. If you don't know it, you ought to try it sometime.
No, in fact, and let me speak to that because what I do as a vocation is I work with Christ-centered not-for-profit ministries, but I do not work with churches specifically because they're so political, and they're very hard to work with. So I can attest to what you're saying.
So since 2010, that's been 2011 is when we actually started our mission with the churches. So we build these unified fronts for churches to come together and represent the city. And last year in our city, we worked with 51 churches to do a series of events where they come and they work together, pastors preach together, they baptize side by side. So this is bridge building, what I call bridge building, and I have a gift for that. I have an ability to bring people of really different mindsets and denominations and views together. Now,
okay, but
I'm not talking about Nancy Pelosi.
But yeah, I mean, you're talking about you all have one thing in common: Jesus Christ.
Well,
what do you have in common with Nancy Pelosi?
Well, I'm not saying we have anything in common with Nancy Pelosi, but I will tell you there's a bunch of blue dog Democrats down there in Washington D.C. And
really?
Ronald Reagan said that they were the reason he got elected.
Okay, can you name one?
Well, I think Joe Manchin is one.
Okay.
Joe Manchin is a blue dog Democrat. There's some of those guys down there, guys and gals down there, that I believe that if you could get some in there and start working on a bridge, hey, you ain't gonna know if you don't start trying to build it. Honestly,
and you don't think that members of Congress have already tried that?
I think you can get into a situation where you can go in there and it be polarized, and I think we are polarized now.
Yeah, think.
Yeah. So if you're
kidding.
If you're a hardcore Republican and you're a hardcore Democrat, there's no ground to be made. That's why we're running as an unaffiliated candidate.
Okay.
Now our value set lines up with the Republican Party, so we voted with the Republicans. But I am able to build bridges across races, denominations, and I believe we'll be able to do it against through these political divides.
So, when you look at members of Congress, Republican or Libertarian or Independent, whatever, members of Congress of the House, who would you say that you would that you most admire?
Newt Gingrich. Now he's not in there anymore, but Newt Gingrich is somebody that I've always admired. Newt Gingrich knew how to build a bridge. Most of what Bill Clinton got done was because of Newt Gingrich. I mean, this is the kind of people that can build bridges. They know how to work between the seams to bring people together. Listen, the Bible says that a nation divided cannot stand.
That's correct.
It's not going to stand. Mm-hmm. So if we get to the place to where it's all about this or this, we're going to be a failed nation. Somebody has to take the initiative to start building bridges somewhere. It has to happen. Now, it may feel impossible. It may seem impossible. Most of the things that you read about in the Word were impossible until they weren't.
Okay, Tracy, so I'm a conservative. So, and the mantra of my show is a Republican does not a conservative make. So when I look at members of Congress, I look at Louis Gohmert as the gold standard. Louis Gohmert is a no-nonsense. He is an uncompromising conservative. What worries me as a conservative is hearing things like what you're saying. And the only way that this seems to come about in the past, historically speaking, when Republicans say, well, we're going to work across the aisle, it's actually what they're actually saying is, well, we're going to give up. We're going to compromise on our side because the historically, Democrats, they don't give up any ground. And so with that in mind, talk me off the ledge on that.
Yeah. So I think for me, just having these deep core conservative values and this being a value set from the time I'm a child, I'm not worried about capitulating to Democratic standards. That's not something I'll have an issue with. I don't bend to anybody's desire. What I do feel like, though, is sometimes it's in the way you speak to people. There's a kingdom language that draws all men near. And when that language comes out, at the name of Jesus, every knee bows. And I know there's people up there that have talked the language or are Christians, but I just feel like that there's something unique about my gift set that allows me to go into rooms where folks normally can't come together, where races normally can't come together, and unify people.
I think about the Amy Coney Barrett hearings, and I look at, I think it was Senator Kennedy, who basically was talking about Kamala Harris, and he talked about her in the most flattering kind, talking about her as a friend. She's a friend of mine. I feel like, and he was as kind and as nice as anyone could be when you're trying to disagree with someone. And it changed not one person's mind. And it's the way Congress works. You always say, my friend on this side on the other side of the aisle, all this bluster that it just makes me sick, right? Yeah. As a conservative. So, okay. So you talk about, okay, it's the way you talk to someone, but that's kind of the way you're supposed to do it in Congress anyway. What is different about your language than what is already in place?
I think the language that's up there now is political. It's so you're talking about a situation where you're sending people who are deeply entrenched in political. These folks that are going, most of them are not novices. They're not people who think outside the box. Being in a system, it's just like anything. If you're in something, that's what you do every day. Whether you like it or not, you end up seeing the confinements of the box. See, I don't have the confinements of the box because I'm not in this. I'm able to go and speak as an American to the people to say the American people have to have a way forward. There has to be a path forward. I'm just not confined to the box. Now, we talked about term limits earlier, but I want to bring you back to this.
Yeah, let's talk term limits. That's good.
I believe that this is why this term limit is important.
Yeah.
Because going into a season to where you're not deeply politically involved, allows you to be able to walk and talk in a very different language. After you've been there for a couple of sessions, guess what? You're political. Now you're talking in a political language, and that political language, it distracts. And
there's a lot of truth to that.
It's total truth. Yeah. So it really all goes back.
So what's your plan for term limits? What would you like?
2 terms and out.
2 terms and out. So a member of the United States Senate gets 12 years, but a member of the House only gets 4.
Yeah, I don't think anybody should stay longer than the president. So if it's a Senate,
the Senate is a 6-year term, so
there should be 1 term in the Senate. Then they should be out. I mean, why would we leave anybody longer than the president? If that's
I think everybody should have 12 years. Well, that's 6 terms for House, 2 terms for U.S. Senate, and 3 terms for president.
I wouldn't be totally opposed.
You wouldn't have the problem with that.
I wouldn't have a total problem with that. But that's the limit. You got to get people out of there.
Yeah, I agree. And you know who else agrees with that? Pat Fallon.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, he's not a career politician.
How do you say that?
How do I say? Well, he hasn't been
in for 11 years. He has not been in office for 12 years. He's been in politics for 11 years.
Right. We just agreed that 12 years would be the limit. So no. I'm saying look, what I believe is that someone, if you've served as a mayor of a town, I'm not saying 12 years in politics, period. I'm saying 12 years in any one position, so that if somebody wants to go from House to the U.S. Senate, I think they should be able to do that. And then they want to go from the U.S. Senate to the presidency, I think they should be able to do that.
Let me tell you what I'm more interested in. I'm more interested in seeing the people raise up and take these offices. That's how it was built in the beginning. That was how it was designed. See, I've been a janitor for 11 years. And when I leave that office, I'll go back and I'll be in the commercial cleaning business, or I'll be in whatever business it is I'm operating in. That's the way you get things done. If you've been 12 years as a Congress, 12 years as a Senate, guess where you're going to be? Stuck with nowhere to go, because you're going to be speaking political jargon that's not going to cross across the aisle. You got to have some kind of language, and the only way you're going to have that is to have people who are returning to the private sector. The things that are being passed in Congress, they don't even understand what's being imposed upon the American people.
I would agree.
Because they don't live the same
I
life
agree.
So I'm not
completely agree.
Yeah,
completely
I think they
agree.
Get out of there as quick as we can.
Okay, so I'm going to make another argument on issues of state legislature. So the state legislature, these guys are. Some people say they're paid. They're not paid. I mean, what you get for being in the House or the Senate is almost nothing. These are truly citizen legislatures until, of course, you get to, I think, 12 years when then you become eligible for a pension. And that's why members of the House and Senate stay in for so long, because that pension is equal to the salary of a state judge. And state judges, of course, get pay raise every year, but that's neither here nor there. But the fact is, Senator Fallon is not eligible for that pension, and so he is moving on to Congress. He is supporting of term limits. I am going to be asking him if he is going to make a term limit pledge, which I hope and I expect that he will, because he actually has talked a lot about term limits. So I agree with you in that. Here's another point of argument that we could have, and I think both sides are valid. So let me just begin by saying that your argument is I come from outside the box. And so I come in with fresh eyes, and I agree. I think that's a great way to come into Congress, and we need more of that. The problem is it's a sausage factory. And if you don't know how to make the sausage and how all of that works, you spend the first 4 years just figuring out how things actually work. One of the things that I'll be asking Senator Fallon about is the first piece of legislation that he proposed as a state senator was for historical monuments, to protect historical monuments. Well, that failed. Now he supported the one that did pass, but what I want to know is, what did you learn from that? And that was one of those things. I mean, he had been in the House all this time. I suspect he thinks, well, that it works the same in the Senate, and I think he figured out, well, no, it doesn't. That's my point. So what I think one benefit that Fallon could bring is that he kind of understands, because he worked with Democrats to pass some legislation and that most people didn't think could get passed. So he has has that experience. He kind of knows how the sausage is made. I think he's got a learning curve, just like everyone. But what would you say to that?
If I were to put it into this term, I run a business every day.
Yeah.
So part of my business is commercial cleaning. I clean for an array of customers. And people in my business, if I go in and I do a job that people are excited about and they're happy about, then I get to carry on to the next job. But if I'm doing a job and the customer comes in and says, I don't like that, then guess what? I get to find a new job, and he finds a new janitor. Now, he's not necessarily asking, does this guy have experience? He's looking to see, what can you do, because the last guy didn't handle business. I would use that same analogy for you. I just got through telling you, as a taxpayer, as the person who's feeding the engine, I'm the payer. I'm the buyer.
Yep.
And I'm not happy.
Right.
That's why I'm sitting here.
Yeah.
You have to realize that the American taxpayer is not happy.
Well, you're preaching to the choir here.
Well, yes, sir, I am. But I want you to understand that that's why I'm running as a write-in candidate. I'm ready for a new customer. Customer's ready for a new service. Old service out.
Well, and of course, Pat Fallon is not the old.
Well,
he is new.
Pat Fallon has been in the system coming up through politics. I think the people, what I'm hearing is, we're ready to flush all this out. I think there's a new start, a new thing coming up.
So you don't see any benefit to his experience, knowing kind of how the sausage is made.
Well, the thing about it is that I don't actually see where the government is doing anything really correctly. I'm overtaxed. You're
talking about this federal government?
Federal and state.
Okay.
I'm overtaxed at every level.
Yep.
I'm underdelivered. Folks aren't handling business. They haven't been handling business, and now the people are waking up. Why am I awake? Why am I sitting here talking to you? And I'm going to tell you why I'm here. I build large concerts. I build large gatherings. I bring people together to celebrate, thousands at a time. Guess what I'm not allowed to do right now in the United States of America and the state of Texas? I'm not allowed to bring people together for a large gathering. I've lost my freedoms. The people who have been in these offices have at least in some way been responsible for my loss of freedom. I'm ready to ditch that system. I'm ready to try something new, and the American people are in the same vein. I'm telling you, you're going to see something different. It's starting now, but I promise you, in 2 years, if I'm wrong, I'll come back here and tell you I'm wrong. But in 2 years, I'll bet you see a whole lot more radical, crazy-eyed people just like myself.
Well, I do hope you're right. Okay, so let's start there. I want to let's talk issues. What issues are important to you? I want to give you a little bit of a platform to talk about the things that are important to you.
Well, the First Amendment is everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when we're able to come together and worship freely and gather together, and I hear these things about, and again, I want to make clear this is not Governor Abbott, but the governor that's talking about 6 or 10 people at the
Thanksgiving,
that is just incredible.
Unbelievable.
We're hearing that in our nation.
Yeah, and giving them permission to go if they need to go to the bathroom. It has to be outside. If you want to go to the bathroom, you can do that. And you can only take off your mask. These are what is it Michigan? Is it yeah?
It's California where the Governor Newsom's in.
Newsom, that's what it. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's bizarre. It feels like the Twilight Zone. And for us looking at this thing and saying, give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
July 4th, we're trying to hold a July 4th celebration in the city. Obviously, it's against all the regulations, all the laws. So we kept pushing, trying to figure out how we're going to do this thing. And it ended up being a deal to where I had to call this thing a protest because of public gathering.
I love it.
So this is how we're able to have 4th of July. Now,
perfect.
Some guy said that you could have 6 people at Thanksgiving, but 30 people at a funeral. So in California, a guy says he's actually calling this a funeral for the turkey.
I love
so that
it.
He can have 30 people to the Thanksgiving dinner. So,
that's brilliant.
But this is bizarre. So the First Amendment is really everything. Obviously I'm passionate about the Second Amendment as well, but the attack that has come on our First Amendment rights, as a believer, as somebody who was raised in the church and spends my life, I mean, that's what I do every single day, is develop events for the Lord. And to be able to be in a position to where that's shut down, I got to tell you, it just crushed my heart. And had I been left alone to just do my events and just worship Jesus, you probably wouldn't be talking to me today. I mean,
You know, my father turned 89 last week, and his number one issue, he watches the show, so his number one issue that he always wants me to ask congressional candidates is this: the debt. The House is where it holds the purse. What are you going to do to lower the debt?
Man, it seems like there's so much to me to lower the debt. There seems like there's so much frivolous spending. I can't tell you that I understand all those pieces right up front. There's got to be, getting in there and taking a look and wrapping your mind around it. I'm imagining there's thousands of things. If you're a small business person like myself, debt is everything.
Yes.
If we go over the budget for what we have for a job, we went broke. So, I think that normal people understand what it means to budget. You have to. If you're going to be successful in America, you have to know how to budget. So I'm not suggesting that I understand everything that's going on in Congress. I can tell you I'm a fast learner. I'm a quick study. If you look back over my history, I've been in the construction business and built city parks. I've been in the commercial janitorial business. I've got one of the biggest businesses in our area. I understand things. I understand how business works, and I can look at things and catch on really quick. I think there's so much frivolous spending in the government that it's unreal, and I believe that we can do a lot. Term limits is another thing. We go back to term limits again. We love this thing, but what is it? After 3 times in, you get a lifelong pension. So what does that do for the debt? If we take away those lifelong pensions of people who are getting paid for the rest of their life, that's going to help your debt. I mean, it's not a huge piece, but it is a piece of it. There's all these things count, and so I think it'd be something that I could look at, do a good job at, and come back and report to the people, hey, this is what I see and this is what needs to get done. I mean, a representative is really not, we overcomplicate what a representative is. So I have 6 girls, and if I give one of my girls a message, and she takes that message across the yard and gives it to my wife and conveys the message that I've given, she has been essentially a representative of what I want to say. That's what I'm trying to do, is represent the people of the 4th District. What is it that you need? What is it that you want to say? And how can I go convey that message effectively for you? And that's what I want to do, is just be a representative for the people.
In light of that, what's most important to the people of the 4th District?
I think the people of the 4th Congressional District is it's going to be freedom. Freedom is most important and should be most important to everybody.
What does that mean?
That means that we don't have to wear a mask when we go out into public. That means that we have the freedom to be with our family. If we want it to be 6 or 60, we can eat bird the way we want to eat bird. We can still have presence with our family. We can play football out in the yard, and everybody can be in the house to eat around the kitchen table. We don't have to sit out in the yard and do some sort of foolishness. This is freedom. Freedom is pre-COVID what folks were doing. You work hard, you invest your money, you pay your taxes, you serve your community, you love on folks. This is freedom. All of the things now, we're not free to go out and love on folks, because guess what? It's against the law to be out in somebody else's yard. All this stuff has gone away. Freedom is the most important thing. Most people will suffer any kind of tax burden, debt issue. I mean, really and truly, this nation's got its issues. Most people will trudge through all of that and continue to work and pay and have pride in this nation so long as they're left to be free.
Tracy, if the November, if the election comes and you fall short of that, are you going to support whoever is the elected official? Will you work with them?
Absolutely, we'll do that, and I'll tell you, we're awake. So we're going to be in this thing now. We're going to be looking. We're going to be holding accountable. We're going to be helping. I want to help any way we can, and I want to say that for me, my process of running for office is not as much about wanting to talk about the shortfalls of Senator Fallon. These are things that tend to come up in politics, and I'm new to it. Mm-hmm. I really like talking about the Lord. I really like talking about what He's doing in His people, and I believe for what He's doing with us is He's given us an opportunity. What a great nation where somebody could wake up in the morning and say, hey, I think I'll just run for that office, I mean,
pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, a wonderful place. And then to look at it and say, okay, we live in such a conservative area that I can do that without any risk of allowing a radical into office. These are great things. I mean, I'm just in a perfect position to offer the people an option. I think a lot of people, including myself, and I will say this, I've said a lot about the process that happened to put Fallon in this position. a lot of that happened because folks like me just weren't paying attention. So I take credit for that. I say, we were not paying attention to what happened. Now, once it come out, everybody's upset about it, right? And so I'm just basically saying, listen, here's you an option. Conservative Christian from the 4th District, lifetimer over here. If you want somebody local and you're not happy with that option, I took my own money and gave the people of the 4th Congressional District an option for another conservative choice. There's nothing bad about that. There's nothing that should be in any way remotely bad about that. That's a great thing.
I like the way you said that. You gave the people of the 4th District another conservative choice. Yeah. So you recognize, Fallon is in my opinion, he is a conservative. And you, the two of you, when I look at the two issues of the two of you, you guys are aligned with one another. I love the fact, you talk a lot about unity on your website. That's an important part of it. And I hope that after the election, you will work to bring unity, regardless of whether or not you're the congressman or you are the former candidate. And I trust that you will, and you'll reach out to.
Unity has been a part of our life for the better part of 10 years now. So whatever happens in this race, unity will be the next 10 years of our life. So that's just something we're going to do. That's part of the kingdom. If you're serving the kingdom, that's part of it.
Amen. Well, I really appreciate you doing this and being here, and I hope that this was helpful for you to hear another point of view from a candidate, from an everyman, I guess is the best way to put it. And while I respectfully disagree with some of the points of why he's running, I think that the great thing, like you said, about being an American is having the freedom to do that. And I think that Senator Fallon would agree with that 100%. So what I'm looking forward to is the re-election of Donald J. Trump as our president, and more importantly, I'm looking forward to seeing our congressional district come back together and really work to work with the president. And I know that both Tracy and Pat are going to do that should they be elected. So please go vote. That's your right as an American citizen. It's really your responsibility. So you pay taxes. You might as well talk and look into those who are representing you in Congress. So with that, later today at 2 o'clock, I will have Senator Fallon here. And so I hope you'll watch that interview as well. Tracy Jones, thank you so much for being here today. And I wish you the very best in your campaign. So until next time, until at 2 o'clock, we will see you later. Don't forget to come back. I am Bunker Bob Steinhagen, the only voice of conservatism in Rockwall County. I'll see you at the polls. Blessings.